I am Amy Vetter, and welcome to the Breaking Beliefs podcast. This valuable time is for you to pause in your day and go on your own self-journey. Discover the beliefs that are holding you back from living your best life at work and at home. Learn from the guests on this show as they share their inspirational stories on how they found ways to break internal beliefs that were no longer serving them. Because if you believe you can, you will. And our podcast begins now. Welcome to this episode of Breaking Beliefs, where I interview Cigi England. She is the CEO of Cigi Boutique and also the founder of Exceptional Being. Cigi graduated from Tennessee Technological University in 2006, and after spending 8 years in the fashion industry in Atlanta, she decided to move back to Cookeville to be closer to her family and friends. With the support of her amazing friends and wonderful community, Cigi's Boutique was created. Cigi just celebrated 7 years in business. Cigi and her husband Michael are involved with local organizations that work with individuals with special needs. She has served on the board at Rising Above Ministries for 3 years. After spending time with their friends that have disabilities, they thought it would be awesome to create a place of their very own. How wonderful it would be to work, play, and cultivate a community together. During my interview with Cigi, we discuss Cigi's background in sales, fashion, and with the special needs community that has created this career that she has today. During this interview, Cigi will share some key takeaways as an entrepreneur to help others succeed in their ventures as well. I am excited for you to hear this interview. Please like, share, subscribe so that more and more people can share in the tips of these leaders on Breaking Beliefs podcast. Welcome to this episode of Breaking Beliefs, where I am going to interview Cigi England. She is the CEO and founder of Cigi Boutique and also the founder of Exceptional Being. So Cigi, do you want to just give a little background on yourself before we begin?
Sure. So I started my boutique. It'll be 8 years in November. And I wanted to set out to be a store where women of all ages and all sizes could come in and shop, and you would feel welcome and you would feel beautiful when you came in, and when you left, you would leave with something that made you a little happier than when you entered. I also wanted it to be affordable. So it doesn't matter how old you are, what size you are. We cater to women from little girl size 6 to women's 3X and everything in between. And just my newest journey is founding a nonprofit called the Exceptional Being, which will open this May. And it is a coffee shop that will employ individuals with disabilities and special needs.
Yeah, so excited to kind of delve into your story here. So let's start from the beginning, and maybe you can give us a little background on growing up, where you're from, what your parents did growing up, siblings, that sort of thing.
Yes, I think that's really important to know where someone came from to how they got where they are today.
Yes.
So I grew up in a very small town called Whitwell, Tennessee. It's about 20 minutes west of Chattanooga. And I went kindergarten through 12th grade with the same group of people. And then I decided to come to Tennessee Tech in 2002. And I graduated with human ecology, fashion merchandising and design with a minor in business marketing. And I graduated in 2006. So I decided to move to Atlanta to pursue my dreams in the fashion world. And it was a recession. So it wasn't really a good time to be starting a career because the whole economy was it was just bad. The housing market, retail, everything was down. So I ended up working like 3 jobs before I got my dream job at America's Mart. So America's Mart is the wholesale mart where now that I own a store, I go there to buy the goods that are in my store now. So think big trade shows, fashion trade shows, home trade shows, gift trade shows. And I was basically a recruiter. So I would go to the Las Vegas market, Dallas, Miami, San Francisco, Chicago, and New York. And I would recruit people to come exhibit in the Atlanta show. So I credit that to my success with my business today because I worked the wholesale and the retail side, and I would see businesses that were successful, and I would take note of their buying habits and, were they catering to their personal style, or were they catering to their customer demographic? And I would notice when clients of mine would close, and then I would reach out to them and be like, hey, why were you not at market? They would share with me what happened to their business. So I would kind of take notes of the right things that they were doing and the wrong things. So I decided to move back to Tennessee, honestly, just because my heart told me to.
Yeah.
I didn't really have a set plan. It didn't make sense on paper. I had a great career in Atlanta. I was climbing that corporate ladder, but I didn't feel fulfilled. And every time that I would come visit my family and my friends, I would leave and it would just break my heart. And I didn't know why I should be here, but I felt like I should be here. So I moved back in 2014 and decided to open my store. And here we are almost 8 years later, and we've made it through a global pandemic. So I feel like we can make it through anything.
That's for sure. So let's start a little bit. Give me a little background on your parents. So what did they do growing up?
So my dad is in sales, and I am my father's daughter. I've only had jobs in sales my entire life. From my very first job to now, I have worked in customer service and in that industry. My mom is a special ed teacher. So that kind of feeds into what I'm doing now with the exceptional being. So I definitely have learned, from my parents, the sales and then the heart for the special needs community. And I'm kind of doing both of those now. And I'm an only child.
Oh, okay. So what industry was your dad selling in?
So my dad was in the tire industry. His company developed a product that it's called flat proofing. So they would put this gel and this foam into large pieces of equipment. And if they were to hit a nail, they would not go flat. They tried to develop it into a consumer product for car tires, but it weighs the vehicle down too much. So it was more in the industrial side.
So what was it, watching your dad, or did he take you to where he was working? So how did you learn from him, or what got you excited about what he was doing?
Yes. So he would take my mom and I on his business trips whenever we were out of school in the summer or the breaks during the holidays. And he was traveling, like he had the whole US territory, and he would leave on Monday, come back on a Thursday, pretty much the whole time I was in middle school and high school. And I would get to meet his clients and get to go to dinners and trade shows and things like that. So I really have always been a people person, and I've seen how my dad would connect with his clients throughout my whole life. And he wasn't just trying to sell a product. He wanted to get to know you and how can this product help you? And he has friends that haven't been he's retired now, but he has friends that he's made through the industry that, we get Christmas cards every year, and we go to when their kids get married, we go to their weddings. And so really just forming that relationship. It's not so much about numbers, but it's about relationships. And if someone trusts you, then they're going to buy what you're selling because they trust you.
Yeah, absolutely. So then that means that your mom and you were alone a lot if he was traveling Monday.
Yes.
Thursday. So what did
you learn from
that? I'm guessing you were a little more independent.
Yes, absolutely. And my mom did not start college until she was 40. So now that I'm almost 40, I'm like, wow, that's a big deal that she was able to go back and do that. Like, I don't know if I could do that right now. And she had, a family to take care of, and she was working full time, and she would go to school at night. And so the sacrifice that she made to fulfill a dream of hers that she had always had. Like now that I'm an adult, I'm like, wow, that's a big deal that she did that. At the time I was a kid, so I didn't really understand it.
Yeah.
But I would also go to work with my mom. And when I would come home from college breaks, I would go into her classroom, and she always worked with middle school and high school aged special needs students. And so I would see how she would interact and how she was, she treated her students just like she treated me. She loved on them, and if they needed something, she would provide it. And She would accommodate them, whatever accommodations they needed to help their learning become easier for them. She would do that. And it really, from a young age, introduced me to the special needs community. And I think when young kids are introduced to that to an early age, it's less intimidating and less scary, because I know some adults who have never interacted with that community and they don't know how.
Right.
So that's something that we want to end with the exceptional being. We want to just be a resource and focus on ability over the disability. We want to be a resource of information for these families with these children and adults with special needs. And we also just want the community to come in and say, we're more alike, we are different.
Right. So what was it? Why was your mom passionate about it? Why was she wanting to go back and do this and, create a lot of stress on herself, through that process? Why was she so passionate about it? Did she have anyone in her family, or was she? Okay. Yeah.
Yes, we have cousins, and a very dear cousin that we were super close to. He was born with CP and a lot of other disabilities, and he was nonverbal. And we were super close. We lived, right down the street from him. We called him Bit. Little Bit was his name, was his nickname. And he was such a huge impact. And he was being raised by a single mother who was my grandma's best friend. And so they were always a huge part of our life. And I think we got introduced to that, and we would see how every day truly was a struggle. No, there were good times and bad times, but when someone is in a wheelchair, you can't just hop in the car and go do whatever you want to do at that moment. You have to make plans and plan ahead. And is there a ramp? Is there an ADA door? Is there a bathroom facility there? And they were such a huge part of our life. And I also think that she had a job in a daycare very early on, and it was a special needs daycare. It was Cigi England in Chattanooga, which is a rehab facility. She got introduced to that world, and she just wanted to make a difference and wanted to, go to college and better herself and give herself more options. And knew that I'd be leaving for college soon. With my dad traveling, she would just be at home. And so she said she had to fill her time with something, and that's what she chose to do.
So how did it change your perspective of everyday life by having experienced that so young?
Yes. The best analogy that I can give, and I don't have children, but when my friends have children, they start to notice things like, this isn't child friendly, or my kid can't go to this building because it's not safe, or, the car seats and the outlets in the house. And you arrange your whole life to make everything child friendly when you become a mom. Well, when special needs parents get the news that they're going to have a special needs child, that doesn't end at 18. That's going to go on longer for their entire life. And they have to face the reality that their child will outlive them, and they have to make plans, and these just plans, but you have to go to a lawyer and really set up an estate and make sure that that child is going to be cared for after you are gone. And I just feel like I have a lot of friends and family members with disabilities and special needs, and the more that I would hang out with them, the more that I would do life with them, holidays, birthday parties, movies, bowling, I began to notice this is not ADA. There is not a ramp here. There is not a door here. My friend Abby could not use the restroom here. And just because something is, you'll go into some handicap bathroom stalls that are technically ADA, but if your wheelchair is a large wheelchair, there's no way it's fitting in there. So I have friends that leave their home and they don't use the restroom all day until they get home, because they know that there's not a public facility that they can use. Also, employment is very hard because companies don't want to take a chance. They think that it's a risk to hire someone with a disability, and it's no more a risk than if they were to hire me with no disabilities. So I just began to notice things when I would be with my friends, and I started to notice there's not a lot of opportunity to build community and to build employment. So we wanted to create something that would do both things.
So having that background, your father in sales, your mom doing this, what did you originally go to college for?
So I originally did go for fashion merchandising and design. So I
And
knew that
why
I
was
wanted
that?
to work from the time I was a little girl. I would be like, remember the fashion plates that you could lay down the piece of paper and do the
Uh-huh.
tracing?
Yeah.
I would do that. I would create outfits. I would have sketches. And I'm talking about from the time I was like 6 years old, I was going to be a fashion designer. If you asked me, that's what I would tell you. Then I started taking sewing classes and I did not love to sew. So I knew that I probably wasn't going to be a designer. I needed to focus more in the sales realm of that. So
Right.
I love the colors. I love the textures. I love that when you look good, you feel good. And when you feel good, you perform better at whatever you're doing. So it's really an art form and it's self care into one. And so I've just always wanted to work in this industry.
Yeah, it's funny. Just a quick story along, it just reminded me what you're saying. I'm a CPA, but what I always wanted to do was go to art school. I was a painter growing up and so forth. And about, probably 10 years ago, or a little more than that, I was like, what if I just went back to school? And so I went and attended orientation at a design school here at University of Cincinnati. I went for the fashion because I was like, that's what I want to do. But same thing as you, like I've never been a sewer or anything like that, but an entrepreneur. But the dean came to speak at the orientation, and one of the things that they do at that school is their culmination, their project at the end of being in school is another school there, like the medical school will come and say, this is my problem. And then the fashion designers have to solve it. And what they did that year was have a fashion show because the medical school said when people put on a hospital gown, they get sicker. And so they
Wow.
designed hospital gowns so people wouldn't feel sick in the
I
gown.
love that.
I know, because what you were saying was like exactly similar. I was like, oh my God, let me add it. And they had like a whole fashion show of people in wheelchairs, people in, all different body shapes and whatever. But I just thought, you don't always think of these creative outlets as solving for real human, needs, which was
True.
interesting. Yeah.
Very.
Yeah. So, all right. So so you kind of, took a step back, looked at like what your strengths are in this field that you love, and you have an interesting degree or mix of degrees. So now when you moved back, so you said you went to Atlanta, had your job there, got your experience. What you hadn't seen was being an entrepreneur, from what I can tell.
Right.
Is your father was a salesperson, but he was working for a corporation. Your mom was a teacher. So what did you draw from there and becoming an entrepreneur? I know that you listened to a lot of people of the mistakes they made, but until you really start a business, you really don't understand the reality of it. And what did you learn?
So true. So I had at the time, still my friends, but I had three friends that were entrepreneurs. And as you know, and as I now know, once you do it, you are very easily able to encourage others because I've been here, I've done it. You can do it too. If I can, you can do it. So we went out for drinks one night and they were all kind of putting me up like, Cigi, you need to open your own store. You have all the tools. You've worked the wholesale side. You've worked retail. You have the knowledge. You have the skill. You have the work ethic. You can do this. And so it was just one night with all these people telling me that I can do it. I was like, okay, I'm going to do it. I'm going to start small. So I started with 400 square feet. I made my own clothing racks. I painted my store and I started very small. And in my mind, I was telling myself, this could be a pop-up through the holidays because we opened on November 1, 2014. If it doesn't make it, I'll just go get another job. So I had the mindset to start small. I didn't take out any loans. I didn't take out a line of credit. I just used what I had in my savings, and I was just full send, like, let's do this. And so I had a goal for day one, and I said, if I reach this goal, it was $500. I'll just tell you, I reached $500 today. That's going to be my sign that I did this. Well, on day one, and it snowed here in Tennessee, so I thought no one would come because we don't know how to drive or act when it snows. We over $5,000 my first day. I almost sold all the inventory. Yes. So I'm like, okay, that is definitely a goal, and that's a sign that I can do this. And so I went back to market. And with my experience of working there, I knew exactly where to go in Dallas, where to go in Atlanta, and how to navigate the market and how to buy and buy from, and who was a reputable manufacturer, who wasn't. So I used that skill and that knowledge that I'd learned from my previous career to be able to restock my store. And within 6 months, we doubled. We went to, actually, we over doubled into a little over 1,100 square feet. And now I'm in my third location, which is even larger. So my advice and my advice that my friends gave me was just start small. Like, I don't have to go buy a building and spend 50,000 decorations and have the prettiest hangers and the prettiest racks, the best, you don't have to have the best of the best to start. Start small, test the water, see if it works, and then you can always grow. And so that's been my philosophy. Hiring an accountant was the first thing that I did because I am not a numbers girl. I am a customer service guru. I know what I'm good at. I know what I'm not good at. And so hiring an accountant was so important for me to see the numbers, to see what I could do, what I needed to do. So that is always my first, my first two things are set area, who's your customer, define your mission, your vision, but hire an accountant.
Yeah. And all the accountants listening to this podcast appreciate you saying that.
Yes.
So, because so many small businesses think they can do it on their own, but you really need to, a lot of times in your situation, they're just reading off their POS system, but not realizing why they have no money. It's kind of like reading your ATM receipt without knowing what's still sitting out there on credit and everything else. So, and how you go and select an accountant that is going to advise you and talk to you about your numbers, not just hand them over to you, is really important, especially in your state.
And when you're not a numbers girl or a person in general, you need to have someone that you can say, hey, I don't get this. I need you to break this down to my level. I'm going to need some circle graphs and some bar graphs and some charts. Like, I need you to break this down to where I can understand it. Right. Because I know how to buy for a boutique. I know how to serve a customer, but I need you to break the numbers down for me in a way that I can understand it. You don't need to hire an accountant that you're intimidated by or that you don't mesh well. You don't have to be best friends, but I need you to communicate on my level.
Absolutely. So what are some things that were pitfalls or that you got in trouble along the way?
I learned very early on to buy what you like. You need to buy what your customer likes. So people come into my store and they'll say, oh my gosh, do you have one of everything? I'm honest. I'm like, no, I don't like half the stuff in here because it's not my closet. It is a store. I'm serving a community, and my taste is a little different than the majority of people here. So you need to serve your client. You don't need to get into this because you like to shop or you have a good fashion taste. That's not what this is. This is a business, and you need to serve your customer, not yourself.
Any other pitfalls you came along the way that as you got into business or as you were growing that surprised you that you didn't know?
Advertising and marketing. I had no idea how much a billboard cost or how much a radio ad cost. So in the beginning, I was using strictly social media, but it's free, and I still use it. It's great and it's free. But when you start a business, like you said, there's no way to know what all is going to come your way. There's not a book on here's how to be an entrepreneur and kill it. This is not a thing because every industry is different. Every, the South is different than the Midwest and all those things. So wherever you live, running a boutique here would not be the same as it is in Atlanta or even in Chattanooga because of the demographic and the size of the town. So I didn't plan correctly for marketing and advertising. I wasn't educated in that area to know that that is really important, and you have to spend a lot of money, but that's what you have to do in order to make money.
Yeah. Okay. So now you've had the business for a good amount of time. What has been the cause of you starting this other not-for-profit and going into this area?
Yes. So my business, my store has afforded me the opportunity to give back to my community. And I've had the honor of serving on 2 little nonprofit boards. And so getting into the nonprofit, the ministry world here in Cookville, there's so many nonprofits that do great things. And I was able to use my store as a tool to give back to those local nonprofits and to sponsor events and to really just use it. I work with the women's ministry here, and when they graduate out of the ministry, they would come and pick out a free outfit for their job interview process. And I was able to use my store as a tool to give back. So that's always been really important to me. And one of the boards that I serve on is called Rising Above Ministries, which is a special needs ministry here in Cookville. And that threw me even more into the local Cookville families, special needs families. And so I would meet them and I would sponsor events with my store, and they would come shop, and they host a women's for all of the special needs moms, and they would come to my store. I would shut it down, do like an exclusive VIP night just for them. And so once I got involved in their world, I wanted to do something that catered specifically to families with disabilities and special needs. So I think by using my store as a resource to give back to others and to get more planted in that community is what really gave me the desire to create a second business, because it's going to be a coffee shop. So it is a nonprofit, but it's also a business.
And what is it? Oh, so why coffee? Why did you decide to do that?
Yes. So my husband and I were actually watching your channel one Sunday, and we were watching Modern Marvels, and it was about coffee shops in Europe. Now there's a coffee shop on every street, and you go to the coffee shop to celebrate. You go there to mourn. You go there to get your coffee. You go there to announce good news. You meet your friends there every day, and they're really the heartbeat of the community. And it doesn't matter that there's one every, 20, 30 yards, because each community has their own, and they're all successful because they are the heartbeat of that community. So we started researching businesses that employ individuals with disabilities, and we found that coffee shops, ice cream parlors, bakeries, there was a dog grooming, and just all these businesses that were doing the same thing that we wanted to do, which is hire people with disabilities. So we knew that it was doable. It was a doable goal. And we also wanted to create community. So that's where the coffee shop came into play. And the coffee world, I'm a newbie. I'm not an expert by any means, but we have 5 different coffee shops here in our town of Cookville, and they have all been super supportive. And it's kind of like, my husband is a runner. The runner community is like super supportive, and they help each other out. The coffee world is like that too. We're not in competition, and they understand that while we are serving coffee, we're also doing a mission as well. So coffee shop, because we wanted to create a business and build community. So the coffee shop felt like the perfect both of those.
So what, as far as your business model, maybe explain that a little further. Is everyone special needs that's going to be working there, or what is the main mission, or what you hope to get out of it? Are you donating money from the coffee shop, or what, maybe you can give a little more background on what you're doing there.
Yeah. So we're going to be integrated, which means people with and without disabilities will be working there. Due to the fact that people with disabilities can't work a typical 40-hour work week, we will be able to employ up to 40 individuals with
Oh, wow.
disabilities because they can only work maybe 1 hour a day or 4 hours a week. Everyone is different, due to their benefits that they receive and due to their ability to do or not do certain things. So we're able to employ way more people than a typical coffee shop because each person isn't going to be able to work that 30-40 hour work week. We're going to have 3 typical baristas, so that means no disabilities, and then we're going to have 2 managers, like an M and a PM manager, that are there at all times. So they will kind of facilitate everything. But when you come into this coffee shop, the typical people will kind of be in the background. You're going to get greeting, you're going to get a cashier, you're going to have an assistant barista and a drink caller, deliverer, with a disability, because we really want this to be about them and we want to put them front and center, so that, like I said earlier, we want to showcase that ability over the disability, and we want our customers to have that interaction and to educate themselves on how to interact with someone with a disability, which it's intimidating to some people if you never have, but the secret is just to be kind, like you would hopefully anyone, disability or not.
Yeah, no, it totally makes sense. So, is your overall mission to employ as many disabled people as you can, or what is it that you're trying to achieve overall?
Yes, so our mission is to employ individuals with disabilities in a supportive environment. So we want that environment to be as helpful and user-friendly as possible. And I think that, I mean, honestly, I wish that the whole world operated like that, because we all have our own strengths and weaknesses. And, we may not have a disability that's visible, but people are sensitive to sound and light and textures and so many things. And we really want to just create a supportive environment. So no matter what you can or can't do, we will find a way to make it more inclusive so that you can, if you want to be the cashier, but you're blind, then we will figure out how to make that work. And there's so many ways to integrate everything. No, is it an extra step or maybe it costs a little more? Sure. But we want this place to be just the ADA poster child, that everyone can get in and out easily and you can see everything. And we just want to create this environment that is very user friendly for our individuals with disabilities.
Yeah, that's very cool. So from an entrepreneur perspective, you've got 3 stores. Is that right? 3 boutiques. Is that what you said?
No, I just have one boutique.
One boutique. And now you're adding this. So how have you looked at planning yourself as an entrepreneur to make sure you're spending the right amount of attention on your different, because these are very different businesses and one that you don't have as much.
Very different.
Yeah.
Yes, I finally have. I've built such a good staff at my store, and for the first time in 7 years, I feel so comfortable leaving it in my girls' hands. And I was talking to someone earlier, and I don't do anything that I wouldn't ask my girls at my store to do, and they know how to do everything. So if I were to disappear for 3 weeks or 3 months, they know how to process shipment. They know how to price things. They know how to do inventory. They know the level of customer service that I expect. And so it was really important for me to have my first business up and running like a well-oiled machine so that I could take the time to start this nonprofit, because it is a process to start a nonprofit.
Absolutely.
I joke and I tell people I harder on this than I did my degree, or Tennessee Tech, because there's so much paperwork and so many moving parts. And we're also doing construction on a building. So you have to today I was picking out light fixtures and, the toilets and the sinks and the faucets and just everything. It's like you're building a house, which is stressful.
Plus you're making everything accessible for your employees, which is different types of counter sizes, I'm sure, and everything else.
Yes. And I've had myself on, the height of everything and the width of the entryways. And I feel like I have earned some type of certification. Like I could be like architect or something after.
Yeah.
But yeah, it was just really important for me to get my store focused and able to step away from that in order to give my attention to this. And then, I'm kind of sad that I'm not going to be able to work full time at both places because I love them both so much. I'm going to try to figure out how I can spend time at both, but still, do everything that needs to be done at my boutique. There are certain things that only I can do. But I've learned how to hand off the things that more people can do besides me.
Well, and I think that's really important is, no matter what you're doing as a leader, that you have the succession planning happening where you're delegating enough to empower the people that work with you, else you can never do your next thing because you're too tied in or, micromanaging everything. And, it's realizing as a leader too, that maybe they're not going to do it exactly the way you are, but they get the same outcome that you want in the end. And, you have to let go of some of those areas of yourself to be like, no, do it this way, but so that you can be
absolutely
thing. Yes. Well, great.
Yeah. And I feel like being an employee first, like I haven't always been in charge or managing people. And I tell my girls, hey, there's a better way to do this. If you can think of a more efficient way or something that makes more sense, tell me and we'll do it.
Right. Yeah. And that's really, really important because you always want to be looking ahead and what's the next thing. So I like to end my interviews with just some rapid fire questions. So you just pick a category and the category is either family and friends, money, spiritual, or health.
Let's do family, friends.
Okay. Things are actions that I don't have that I want with my family and friends.
I would like to be more patient. I feel like sometimes we're, kind of mean to the ones that we love because being in customer service, you're on all the time. So Then I come home and I maybe explode, not about my husband, but to my husband about everything going on. So I would like to just be more kind and have more patience.
Yeah, good one, good one. Things are actions I do have that I want to keep.
I feel like I'm very optimistic. I'm always going to find the bright side, and I've had to work on that. I haven't always had that. Going through tough times in life, you got to focus on the good, and you have to choose to be happy every day. And so, optimistic.
Great. Things are actions that I don't have that I don't want with my family and friends.
Don't have that I don't want. I never want to be too busy to make time for my family or friends.
Yes. And that's a hard thing with being an entrepreneur and opening a new business. So yeah, keeping that
very
guiding light. Things are actions that I do have that I don't want.
I think I worry too much. I think I worry about things that are out of my control. And that's something that I'm working on too, because there are some things and worrying about it isn't going to change the outcome. So I do worry, but I wish that I did not.
Yeah. Awesome. So is there anything that I haven't asked or you would like the listeners to take away from our conversation today?
Yes, I always encourage people, someone may be listening to this and think, oh, that's so cool. They're entrepreneurs, they're both chasing their dreams and they're happy and they're fulfilled. Everyone can do this, but you have to take the risk and you have to be willing to fail. Failure is an option, but how you deal with failure, how you grow and how you keep moving on. And it's very easy to see either one of us and see how successful today, but sometimes we just show the highlight reel. So I always tell people, if you're unhappy with your job, if you're unhappy with any situation in your life, you have the power to change it, and only you. So you can say, mediocre, getting through life, floating by, or you can choose to follow your dream and your passion and take that risk. And life is too short to not take the risk, and you just got to do it.
Yeah, love it. Well, great. And so I'm looking forward to meeting you in person later this month, actually.
Yes.
Yeah. It's at the end of this month at Tennessee Tech. We are both at the women's conference there speaking. So I'm looking forward to hearing more of your story there and meeting all the attendees. Well, thank you very much.
Yeah, so I had to read your book. Cheryl has me a copy, so.
Oh, good. Awesome.
Yes.
Well, thank you so much for being on today and sharing your story. And there were so many great takeaways for people to learn from. So thank you.
Thank you for having me, Amy.
And now for our mindful moments from this interview that I just completed with Cigi that I found very inspiring and is really the whole point of this podcast of really learning what in our background ends up coming through in all of the work that we do in our careers and how we can pivot our paths so that we can do things that fulfill us with purpose. And we started out talking about Cigi's background with her dad being in sales and her mom being a special ed teacher and what she really learned from both of them. And their passion in each of those areas were very contagious to her and opened her eyes to what was possible. And I think the other really important takeaway was her own interest in fashion and really understanding what she was good at and what she was not good at. I think too many times we push ourselves into areas that we might have a passion around, but try to do things that don't align with our skills and our abilities and really try to understand where we are strong and what can be our best use of our ability. And I know for myself as a CPA that, I was so determined to be an accountant and a CPA, and getting into my first job in the Big Four and audit, when I started looking around at the other CPAs that were more senior than me, I already knew that I may never be able to have the ability to do the things that those people could do. But I did know that my passion was around helping small businesses and helping entrepreneurs be successful. And so really pivoting your path so that you can stay with the things that you're an expert in, which is what Cigi demonstrated, but also looking for the opportunity, which was really being in sales, this area that she found so exciting with her father, but doing it in an area that she was passionate about. And what we talked about was understanding that she needed to get the right amount of background to even be able to do what she did today. And I think this is a really important lesson that a lot of us kind of jump steps and just want to start a business without actually having lived what the work is and know the ins and outs and where the pitfalls are and so forth. So really being that researcher, that observer in the work that you do, so that if you ever want to pivot or transform your career, that you're looking out for what are those things you can learn from others that will help you. And some of her advice, her key tips were really helpful of when she decided to start her business and her friends encouraged her to do it based on the experience that she had, that you don't have to start out with this huge business and this huge presence, that she started small. She knew she was taking a risk, but she had a goal in her head of how much she was willing to risk. And I talk about this a lot when I talk to entrepreneurs, is knowing your exit, right? Like not to keep pushing towards something that's not working, that when is your point of your exit so you don't lose your shirt. And she had this test of having a $500 sale day and exceeded it greatly by having a $5,000 sale day, but it gave her the confidence that she could make this work. And she had the experience then when inventory was lower than what she expected of how to buy, because she had had the experience as a buyer herself. The other big tip that she had was about hiring an accountant. And I think this is so important because so many entrepreneurs or people that are even on their own as a contractor, or maybe you make commission, that you don't necessarily think about the importance of having an accountant because maybe you just think of it for your tax return, but not necessarily for what you're going to need as far as advice to be successful, and someone defining what that actually means, what the numbers mean. And then the third big tip that she had was making sure you define your mission and your customer. So who is it that you want to be selling to? That you don't just create a business because that's what you like, but you have to look around at what your customers want and make sure you're catering to them. Now, another thing that she talked about was the importance of empowering your staff and teaching them the business so that when you're ready for your next thing, you could do that. And a big thing that she did was get involved with the communities and the other passions that she had around special needs, which actually started bringing forward her next opportunity, which is the founding of this new coffee shop that will employ people with disabilities and create a community that is accepting of all abilities and make sure that people are supportive along the way. But she couldn't be doing all of that had she not empowered her team in her boutique business so that she has the space to be able to create her next best thing. So this is a really important lesson that we should always be thinking about succession planning and who could actually take our seat at the table so that when we're ready for our next move, that there's space and a way for us to make that transition when we are ready. And it was so important for her to do this because of this purpose that she has, this mission that she has to help so many people, which then comes from her background of watching her mother and having these family and friends along the way of wanting to make their lives better as well. So much there to really be inspired by with what she is doing. Her last thing that she really talked about was just encouraging people that if you want to be an entrepreneur, you have to be ready to take a risk. That what you might see on the outside of success is there's a lot of things that don't go right along the way, and be able to stay positive and have the power within yourself to follow those dreams. So I hope you enjoyed today's conversation as much as I did. Please like, share, subscribe to this podcast so that others can be able to take away these lessons as well. Thank you for taking the time out of your day to listen to the Breaking Beliefs podcast. I hope you will take a moment to pause before entering back into your day to reflect on this podcast and note 1 to 2 actions you are inspired to do from today's conversation that you could incorporate into your life. To read the full blog and listen back to this episode or any other, you can find them at www.amyvetter.com/Breaking Beliefs podcast and related videos on my YouTube channel. For daily inspiration, follow me on Instagram, Twitter, Facebook, and LinkedIn at Amy Vetter CPA. I hope that you will choose to like this and subscribe to this podcast on iTunes, Spotify, and more so that you can join us for more inspiration on our next episode.